Good afternoon and welcome to this week's edition of Halftime Talk, the final edition of 2022 of our weekly feature interview series. And we're delighted that we end the season with Dr. Cyril Widdershoven, founder and senior advisor, Geopolitics and Country Risk at Verocy. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm very well, and thank you so much for joining us. This has been the year of geopolitics, so I suppose that's maybe you might say every year is the year of geopolitics, but for us mere souls that don't track it as closely as you and your peer group, geopolitics has come to the fore in a very pronounced way, obviously with the war and the Russian invasion of the Ukraine. Perhaps that will be a good starting point, Dr. Cyril. Where are we at with this war? We have headlines today in the New York Times indicating that perhaps we start the early signals of discussions of a détente between the Ukrainian President Zelensky and the Russian government, Vladimir Putin. Your thoughts on where we end 2022 with this terrible crisis in Europe and the war in Ukraine?
I'm hearing it also. The real issue is that as long as the Ukraine and Europe is thinking there is more to gain, real discussions on negotiations or peace talks, I do not think they are even feasible yet. The position that Russia is now holding is not one that will be able to be held for longer. The reasonable silence on all the last days is maybe due to the fact that Russia is not able to do more than it has been doing. So there is a kind of World War I stalemate. The outcome of it all, I think, is still totally unclear. But if I hear from people in the Ukraine, they are not yet ready to set a deal. So
what about Washington? There is some reporting that Washington might be the place in which we'll start to put some pressure on Ukraine and Zelensky and Europe as a whole to ease its opposition. Where do you think Washington stands at the moment on this crisis?
I am hearing these also. I have been hearing them more or less since the 26th of February. So as long as we are not hearing from Biden or a very, very close advisor to him that this is on the mind, I think keep in mind media and rumors are always a very good thing. And when things are not moving on, then rumors about, okay, maybe that Washington will start pushing Europe. Europe is divided, but keep also in mind, Ukraine is Europe, and this is very close to the EU, extremely close to NATO. So for Europe to demand that the Ukraine will force themselves into a negotiation in a situation that loads of area of the Ukraine is still in Russian hands. I think it's maybe wishful thinking. It's going to be Christmas, so Europeans are more wishful thinking than otherwise, but reality is something else.
So the reality is we're kind of stuck at the end of 22 in this sort of First World War grinding war in Europe, relatively contained, although tragic for Ukrainians, yet it's still somewhat physically and geographically contained in its physical conflict. But of course, this is a global economic war, it would appear, at this time, even though the physical conflict is confined to the Ukraine eastern provinces. If we look at the global economic war that this is, and you're with us or you're against us, which seem to be a kind of a dominant narrative throughout 2022, the Europe and the US looking for others to be with them, and if you're not with us, you're against us. Where do you think that is now, globally, as we end 2022? The Europeans and the Americans seem to have backed away from forcing others to be with them.
Yes. Okay. You are with us or without us. That is an easy thingy. Yeah, because you can say that. To enforce that on others is going to be extremely hard. And second of all, we are having economic strategic interest in other areas also. So it's not only Russia, but it's also China, it's also India, it's also the Arab world. We are now looking more into Africa. So to enforce, okay, some say again, a neo-colonialistic approach. If you want to deal with us, you also need to act like we want to. I think in a globalized world, which we are still, even that is changing, we are also depending on what is the position of powers in Asia. We need Arab oil and gas. We do not want to have MENA to be in an economical crisis or really go into Asia. So there are real issues that are playing against the theory of you are with us or without us. We are depending on others, especially because, yes, okay, we are lacking more or less 150 to 170 BCM of Russian gas. Maybe we will lack 4.4 million barrels of Russian oil. Our cars and our trucks are driving on diesel. Diesel is Russian. So we need to look at others in a more flexible approach than maybe that some politicians are sometimes saying. Keep in mind, politicians are making the official strategy of a government. Bilateral relationships are also being dealt with on, let's say, the level of a Shell or a Unilever or a BP, and they are looking at it sometimes in a more flexible way.
If we take those different parts of that geopolitical, economic warfare, if you like, obviously one of the big ones is OPEC plus, and the oil exporting countries, 23 countries, and the two biggest actors there, of course, are Russia and Saudi Arabia. And now when OPEC plus decided at their meeting in early October to cut oil supply quotas by 2 million barrels a day, it was seen by Washington in particular, but also by Europe to a lesser extent, that Saudi Arabia was choosing, in this analogy of you are with us or against us, that Saudi Arabia was choosing to be with Russia because they were weaponizing oil policy. That was how the politics of it were interpreted by Russia or by Washington. I'm wondering, from your perspective, that analysis, was that correct by the West? Is it wrong? Is it right? What is your view on where Saudi Arabia and OPEC Plus stands versus the crisis in Ukraine?
Okay, on a geopolitical level, the position that Europe and Washington have been taking, I can support to a certain level. To choose for one side related to energy, and yes, I do understand that OPEC Plus is then stating we are looking at market fundamentals, we are looking at technicals. There is a distortion between the paper market and the real market. Yes, that is true. That is 100% true. But to choose clearly in a situation where inflation in Europe is sky high. Yeah, we have seen figures we were used to hear from Argentina or from Egypt. Yeah, and we are now seeing that. So to cut oil production, or okay, theoretically cut oil production at a moment that prices are going up, inflation is high, economic recession is stated to be on the horizon. Yeah, that is seen by Westerners, including me then, as a position that is being taken as being in the energy sphere, as being support to Russia at the time that Russia is forcing us with weaponization of energy. Do I understand why OPEC is doing it? Yes, because prices were going down, demand is being threatened, yeah, recession, and China is not yet opening up. So the position that Saudi, the UAE were taking, I can understand. The vision that was being put into the market was hinting on the other one, because they could have said, look, let's not do it. Let's not do it. And then in reality, and you know that also, in reality, the market would not have changed at all, because they are cutting, but they are not still cutting, and maybe those 2 million are the ones that they did not yet cut before, because OPEC is underproducing. So 2 million, is it now reality or is it not reality? So you could have made the point, let the market just play out and see what happens. The statement they made was at that moment, a real positioning of, yes, okay, we are looking at market fundamentals, but Westerners would say do not, yeah, and we are also looking at market fundamentals, yeah. By doing nothing, you would not have had this so-called crisis between Washington and Saudi, while the position that Saudi stated, okay, USA, why are you even addressing this issue? Because you are also not producing as much as you can. So it's like one is accusing the other of doing this thing.
I suppose when the decision by OPEC Plus was made in early October, it happened at a time when relationships between Washington in particular and Riyadh were already deemed to be in a sour place. Biden went to Riyadh in the summer for many reasons, but one of which was to find alignment on oil policy. And so it would appear that the OPEC Plus decision came at a time when the relationship was sour, and so this looked like it was extra part of going from sour to stinking bad. And so if you look at the relationship between Riyadh and Washington at the end of 22, with all of these pieces involved, obviously Ukraine, OPEC Plus, they're only parts of the puzzle. There is many other parts of the Washington-Riyadh relationship. How do you assess the relationship as a whole? Is it as bad as it looks, or is it over? Is the sourness exaggerated? What are your thoughts?
I think the sourness is over exaggerated. Of course, there is no love between President Biden and Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. However, if we look on the US-Saudi economic military cooperation, it's still extremely strong. We saw it during FII 2022. There were no Russians, there were no Chinese, there were not a lot of Indians, and the rooms were filled with people from the USA, UK, and Europe. So there is still a very strong under the surface relationship, dependency. Saudi also understands that security of Saudi is still directly linked to the USA. Whatever we hear, because China is not militarily yet there. Russian arms are proving not to be as good as people maybe even thought. So the only real security provider is still the USA. On finance, on investments, yes, we are now again hearing China and Saudi are making for 50 billion US dollars deals. Keep in mind, these are MOUs. Chinese MOUs most of the times do not materialize at all. And the main financial link for Saudi is still USA, New York, or London. So,
well, if you look at that point, the Chinese point, that was another big part of this geopolitical, global economic warfare, if you like, of the Ukraine conflict. China taking advantage of the opportunity that has come their way. Europe, the US, experiencing this great fracture with Russia. And China now sort of moving. We just see this end of a visit by the Chinese president to Saudi Arabia. He met all of the leaders of the Gulf states. His first visit for 6 years, I think. How do you assess China's reaction to the war in Ukraine, Russia's war in Europe, how they are navigating it? What exactly is their position? Are they supporting Putin? Are they neutral? How do you assess it, and where do you think it's going?
For China, the geopolitical, geostrategic theory is extremely easy. It's nation first. So China first. China has been trying to be supportive of Russia, but found out, okay, Russia has been overplaying, so Russia is much weaker than that China and we were even thinking of. So China is now trying to take a advantage of the growing weakness of Russia, which means oil and gas and investment opportunities in Russia will be there for China. They are taking an advantage of the lower energy prices, yeah, because Russian oil is going into China, but do not forget there is another player in Asia which is called India. So China is trying to fill in the loops that are now, or the holes that are now there because of the weakness of Russia. That China's visit to Saudi comes now at this moment with President Xi in there also shows that China sees an opportunity to push certain ideas it already had forward in time, and I'm extremely interested, and I'm not interested in the 50 billion project deals. No, what are they looking at? What is related to oil, gas, and infrastructure? Because the real position that China is taking in the region is related to access to ports, airports, etc. If they are able to get more out of that, then you can say China is really entering into the Middle East and connecting the dots it already had.
Will the Middle East, will the Gulf, will Saudi Arabia have to choose between Huawei 5G and the West? Because that has been a line that the Americans seem to have really put in the sand. They forced the UK to back away from it. Where do you think that stands vis-a-vis this sort of new emerging partnership, Gulf with China, Gulf obviously, as you said, still very connected to the West and US security. Huawei 5G, where does that stand?
I think that if I would be an Arab leader, I would play the every single side at the same time. So to choose for one side, yeah, like they have been doing before, is not the right one. To choose now only for Asia, I think that's also not the right one, because in the end, and we did address it a bit, but COVID plus Ukraine made clear to loads of manufacturers that being reliant on China alone is going to be a major issue if China is keeping on what it's doing. So to hedge your bets, to hedge your risks, is being done now. Yeah, India, maybe even Egypt is taking advantage now. For the Arab world, they should be doing the same. Do not break off one relationship and do not rely totally on the other, because what they should realize, China is not looking at the Arab world to give them the advantage. It's always to the advantage of China first. And if it's then having a positive effect on somebody else, that's okay. But in the end, China is doing what we were doing in the 19th centuries. We were helping, but it was to the advantage of us.
If we look finally, just to wrap up with
Yeah.
the kind of jigsaw puzzle, in the middle of these intersecting points, there is Iran.
Yeah.
Iran
Yeah.
has a very close relationship with Russia and with China.
Yeah.
Russia is supplying the nuclear capability in Iran. China is providing them with a lot of economic access. Iran is supporting Russia in its war in Ukraine.
Yeah.
And yet Iran is the existential threat of Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states. How we had a very profound and yet somewhat timely statement by the foreign minister of Saudi Arabia over the weekend.
Yeah.
All bets are off if Iran gets a nuclear weapon.
Exactly.
He made that statement at the World Policy Conference in Abu Dhabi over the weekend. And we have a situation now that the JCPOA, the Iran nuclear agreement with the P5 plus Germany now is ultimately dead. There's no framework to stop Iran proceeding to have nuclear weapon capability. How does that sit in the middle of all of these other relationships? And where do you think it goes now? I mean, at the end of the year, JCPOA dead, Iran now standing on the doorstep of potentially nuclear weapon capability.
Yeah. Look, what is strange in 2022 that we European leaders were still having the positive idea that something positive would come out of the JCPOA. It was clear that both sides were looking for an excuse in the end not to go there. The pivotal role that Iran is still playing at least inside of the Gulf area is still there. So in 2023, we will need to, with all our knowledge and our insights or our security positions, look at what Iran is doing. I do not think that Iran will get the support of China. China is not going to be militarily supporting Iran. Russia, at this moment, is in such a dire situation that any enemy of the enemy is my friend. So that's why you see the increased cooperation on defense, etc., between Russia and Iran. For every single Arab country, this is a major issue. They do not want to talk about it. It is surprising that the Saudi foreign minister was so blunt. Yeah, okay, that's maybe a change. But what I think the Saudi, the UAE, Bahrain, Egypt, Israel are looking at it as a most probably the first new crisis of 2023. If this will happen, forget any bearish sentiment in the market, because this is up kike times 3. Yeah, so it's going to not only destabilize Iran, Iraq, Saudi, it's also going to be hitting Suez, the Suez Canal, Israel, Hezbollah, etc. So we are looking at a crisis that we knew since years. We try to forget it. We try to bring it down to we'll meet an agreement, while the reality was already totally different. And think also, Iran is not as stable as it was at the beginning of 2022. The Iranian regime, whatever they are saying, they are now facing opposition inside of Saudi that is stronger than what they have ever been seeing. Yeah,
They're inside of Iran. They're facing
inside of Iran, the protest, the opposition is still there, and that we did not see ever since 1978. Yeah, so an unstable, fundamentalist, extremist regime under pressure is able to do, let's say, irrational things. Well, I still think most of the Iranians are much more rational than that we are thinking of. But okay, when they are put in a corner, things can go wrong extremely quick.
and that seems to be a note of some sober point to consider for our discussion this morning. The outlook for the new year, the big geopolitical story is, where does a Iran a nuclear weapon capability go? How does it surface, and how does it be challenge all of the interconnecting circles? In some ways, it makes the Russian Ukraine crisis, while obviously of a great scale. I mean, if we had a second of similar scale in the region, and at the whole point of, if anybody was to take preemptive strikes, not waiting anymore, not waiting any longer, that would be, we'll have to just wait and see where that goes. Listen, we have to wrap it up there. Dr. Cyril Widdershoven, thank you so much for being on the final edition of Halftime Talk of 2022. An absolute pleasure to have your insights, and we look forward to seeing you soon again in the upcoming 2023. Have a wonderful festive season, and we look forward to talking to you soon.